We are live.
Excellent. So, it's not Groundhog's Day anymore.
It isn't Groundhog's Day.
We don't
it
Groundhog
just
Day.
feels like it,
feels
though.
Like Groundhog Day. It does not feel like Groundhog Day. It is February 3rd, 2022. Yes, it is the 3rd of February, which means it is not January anymore. I guess is all I got for you. Welcome to Suzilla. Susie and Matt here at Susie Health Solutions doing our thing.
Yeah, we are doing our thing because, well, we're knee deep into our ethics courses.
Yeah, we talked about that briefly last week. Yeah, briefly about that. And it's been really interesting. I've been working on a life insurance module. Matt's been working on life insurance and long-term care planning module, and you've been working on.
Well, I finished that. I'm on to annuities and Social Security.
Okay, so we're both doing financial planning type training. Yeah. I mean, we're not financial planners. I'm going to lay that out clear as a bell. We are not financial planners. We're insurance people.
No, but we do that. Do the training every year. I think this is my fifth round of training.
We do it every
2
years with health insurance, and so coming into 5-6 years now.
Yeah, and we do fraud training about every year.
Fraud, waste, and abuse. Yep, that's
fraud and securities.
Yep, that's important. Fraud, waste, and abuse is critical. I do fraud, waste, and abuse for my tech training as well.
Okay, so
I double down on fraud, waste, and abuse. I know more about fraud, waste, and abuse than a lot of people.
Now, if you haven't been paying attention to Central Washington, you might have missed.
Where we live, by the way.
You might have missed a few cases.
Fraud, waste, and/or abuse.
Fraud, waste, and abuse. Now, we've had a couple really good, kind of private reporters look at our area a couple different times.
Independent, maybe is the word.
Independent, freelance.
Freelance. There we go. That's the word.
Old world. Yeah. Well, we've got Dominick, Bonny, who's been doing a couple pieces that have been picked up by other stories have been picked up by other publications and news articles.
Exactly. He's done some really good investigative journalism.
And I'm not going to slight that Danesh guy on TikTok.
Yeah, I know, right?
For exposing that knucklehead over in Leavenworth.
Well, he's exposed dozens of people.
Oh, it's just incredible watching some of the stuff he tracks down. It's like I would not want to be tracked down by him.
He's actually really slick at getting the details. Well, he knows how to track through the internet. If you want to see, he's on TikTok, and what he's been doing is he has been tracking down people who are bigoted and narrow-minded and doing illegal and cruel things or fraudulent stuff.
Yeah, and because what happens on the internet is forever.
Yes, right. Whether you like it or not.
Yeah, it's rather amazing to watch. He's been picked up by other ones, but that particular case was basically a cook producing faked up COVID misinformation stories out of there,
and saying, "Well, I'm with this medical center."
Yeah, it implies
there was an implication there, a little inferral there.
Yeah, we've had a lot in our area. We had Dr. Anna Elperin. She's out of Ellensburg.
Oh, I'm going to have to look and see how to pronounce her name.
Yeah, it's Elperin.
Elperin?
Yeah, she got hit with a $30,000 fine for not following COVID protocols.
Yeah.
But a bunch of journalists walked in from one of the stations on her, and sight unseen, they were able to get exemptions for COVID.
Yeah. For COVID vaccines, like without actually even having any real reasons why you would need to be exempt from COVID vaccines.
Then then from there we've got the firefighters.
Oh yeah,
Seth Ellis and Josh Bollinger, who quit over getting faked COVID COVID vaccine cards from Geoff Reynolds, who was fired from Walgreens.
Right. He's a pharmacist who was working for Walgreens in East Wenatchee, and what he would do is he would get the appointment set.
Mm-hmm.
He'd fill out the vaccine card. They'd go in their little room. He'd squirt the vaccine in the trash can, slap a Band-Aid on him, and say, here's your card. Complete and utter fraud,
mm-hmm.
and it just bad. He's been fired from Walgreens, but I don't know if there's I haven't seen any news about any kind of other consequences to his poor behavior.
That's a big one because I looked at
it's huge.
Pharmacy discipline.
Yeah.
The pharmacist discipline. There's about 2,000 pharmacists in Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
And in the last 2 years, only 35 of them have been disciplined for egregious acts.
Yeah, but usually it hasn't been a federal offense.
Yeah. However, it's one of those things. It's policing your own.
Yes, and that's one thing that the medical industry has always done. The whole we're going to police our own thing,
and they don't have a really good track record. Remember when they came out saying, "Oh, we're going to police the disinformation out there," wink, wink, from our own.
Yeah.
A handful across the United States have had any sort of sanctions.
Yeah, it's
and the amount of damage that's caused because of that is incredible. It really is.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
We can go all the way back to the original, the king daddy of disinformation, and that's that knucklehead over in England who did the paper on vaccines leading to
autism. Yep.
And that was completely debunked.
And it's still
to this day being quoted by anti-vaxxers. And it's like, oh my gosh, the guy who had his license pulled, it was completely discredited, showed the financial link between him and a pharmaceutical company for this trial drug.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, wow.
And there are those who are still saying that he was railroaded and he was still telling he wasn't, that there was no fraud, that he was telling the truth, and a lot of BS. There are people who just really desperately want to stick their heads in the sand. It's really weird. But that still leads us back to ethics, which is what really much ethics and that kind of stuff. That's kind of what we're talking about today.
Yeah, because that's kind of a big one.
It's not kind of. It's a real big one.
It's a huge one.
It's real big.
Well, I kind of got my, that speech that everyone has when, you grow up in the West is, you're only as good as your word.
That's true. We get that a lot.
But for some reason, that's just void.
Yeah.
It's like, what? It's like,
well, there's no, okay. Another good example of you're only good as your word is the mafia omerta thing. Well, okay. So? Used to be that you'd never talk to the cops if you were part of the mafia, right? At least this is the stereotype. I don't know. I've never been in the mafia. I don't know firsthand. But it was a whole, honor above all things. Family first. Kind of don't rat on your family, and it was a blood oath, and that's gone. You might still be making the oath, but no one's obeying. But it's not necessarily being obeyed, and that's ethical. That's ethics too. It's honesty through. It's a whole. You're only good as your word. Honesty level there.
Well, you have ethics to a group.
Yeah, ethics to that particular group, and that's that's a real thing. I mean, yeah, they're not usually doing the best things for the community, but they're doing things for their group, and you want people to be ethical in your group. And that's if the first time that the FBI looks at you sideways, you go, yeah, him. You're not being ethical to the group. You're being ethical to the community. But that used to be, it used to be as good as your word. That was never a thing that you would ever talk about.
Well, this is one of the big things that's come out, and I've heard this word used more than once.
Uh-huh.
And that's the term snitch.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're not in a 1940s gangster movie. You're not a criminal overlord.
No.
And you're when talking to the authorities, you should be, yeah, we did this. It's that concept of, if you're proud of something, it's right out there in the open.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if you're doing illegal stuff, it's not out there in the open. Or at least not out there in the open for the cops to see. Otherwise, you get arrested.
Well, there's common sense there.
Yes.
However, that's kind of sidelined. I mean, the age of Trump and all.
Mm-hmm.
This last weekend he mentioned the whole, Mike Pence could have overthrown the election.
Yeah.
Okay, so you wanted him to literally go against the will of the voters.
To violate the Constitution.
That sounds like sedition to me. It's not complex.
No.
It's that voter integrity, important stuff. It's who's your community?
Mm-hmm.
Is your community your church? Is your community your criminal organization? Or is it truly where you live?
See, that's a really interesting question. When you're dealing with a large situation like a church or your fraternal organization or your troop or whatever, your community within your community, you've got to, you can't play the situational ethics game with that. Because what's going to happen is, if your organization, your church, your troop, your whatever, if they're doing something illegal or unethical, and you're not on board with that, you're gonna violate the ethics of the group for the greater good.
Yeah, but the question is where does that greater good lie?
Exactly, and that can be a tough one for folks.
And I don't really see it as a tough point for folks.
Well, for some people, sure it is.
And does there need to be more training on this?
Probably. Well, what you run into from a human standpoint is people don't want to rock the boat, and they don't want to lose. Well, sometimes it's a matter of being in physical danger.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Dominick got he's been threatened more than once.
Yeah.
For stuff that he's uncovered in a.
Well, it's not only just the physical danger, but when you're in those cult and abusive situations,
that's where things get really interesting, when you're culty, abusive kind of stuff.
Because in addition to not being able to speak truth outside, because that's the big thing. Because can truth be spoken outside?
How many secrets are you keeping?
How many secrets are you holding for that group? And one of the things that cults and groups like that, and criminal groups do like that, is they practice isolation.
Yes.
That they've got to be the sole authority.
And that you have nothing outside of them.
Mm-hmm.
Without them, you are abandoned to the wolves.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the America thing with the mafia, because it's that kind of tight, culty kind of community thing, I guess.
There's purpose to criminal organizations.
Yeah, there's no question about that. But just the stereotype is not the same anymore. But either way, but yeah. So when it comes down to cults, it's a matter of taking you and isolating you and making sure that you get a filtered version of the world that is tailored to their agenda.
Yeah, their viewpoint. And it's not necessarily one that's ethical.
No.
Ethics, you can share freely what goes on. I mean, if you're having to commit lies to stay in a group, it's not a healthy group.
So secret societies, for example.
Yeah.
Like the Masons.
Yeah.
They have a lot of secrets.
They have a lot less secrets nowadays.
Yes, they did. They're a lot more transparent than they used to be. But there was or the secret societies in the colleges, like it was at Harvard or Yale, the Skull and Bones.
Skull and Bones.
Yeah. I mean, it starts off as a group of like-minded individuals getting together and drinking beer.
Yeah, usually.
And somehow it starts to spiral a little.
Well, it's one of the good, real keen examples on that is how many gangs are in the LA Police Department.
I mean, what do you mean by in the department?
There are literally gangs of police officers in the department.
Like hardcore clique kind of situations, but that are violent.
That are violent.
That could be considered gangs.
Well, no, not considered actual.
Like Crips and Bloods
gangs.
level?
Not Crips and Bloods. They've got other names.
Yeah.
But they have initiations like killing a perpetrator.
Oh. No, I had not heard about that.
Yeah, that was one of the keen ones. When you get into organizations like that and you get your own like little secret, here's your Punisher patch.
Yeah.
We're gonna hang out. This is our clubhouse.
See, there's nothing wrong with having clubhouses and patches. It's just as long as you're not keeping dangerous secrets.
Well, yeah, but the whole doing some initiations on that level is really bad. Yeah.
Well, then you're murdering somebody to be an initiation. That's a problem. That's also a
problem.
That's also a vicious secret. That's not an okay secret to keep.
Yeah.
Now, the secret handshake, that's one thing.
Yeah.
The we torture small animals as part of our initiation. Mm-hmm. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
That's a different kind of that's. Does that cross your ethical line?
It's one of those.
Shouldn't it if it doesn't?
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like, I had when I service we did weird things like that.
Yeah, but was it secret?
You had. Yes and no.
Okay.
There was wink wink nod nods of like, oh hey, your B&I gear is missing or messed up, so you steal one off the other one. Motor pool shenanigans were just huge in the military.
That makes sense.
So that you were inspection ready.
Well, yeah.
But there was a point that if you get caught, it's like, yeah, we did it.
But you owned up to it.
You had to own up to it. That was part of it, was getting caught. It was weird stuff that goes back to the Celtic days of stealing your neighbor's cow, sort of deal.
Yeah, or a bride.
Or bride.
Yeah, but you also owned up to it, and so it was an open secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between that and having a necklace of ears.
Yeah. Yeah, you.
Yeah.
We all know those really happen too.
Yeah. There's certain things you don't do.
Yeah.
Certain lines you don't cross. Mm-hmm. When I was in a combat zone, anyone beneath the rank of captain could not speak to a member of the press.
Well, yeah.
You could not.
You guys weren't cleared to.
Yes.
You couldn't, because most often, mm-hmm. they learned that in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. Your younger soldiers would tell the truth.
Well,
they wouldn't tell. They would say this is what's happening, which might not be the press ready version. We all know that's yeah.
We're a bunch of dumbass privates, and I do say that.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're young men who are in a very tense situation. But the whole "no, you can't talk to the press" thing that's spin control.
Oh yeah, it's not necessarily that.
Uh-huh.
It's
sure it is.
It's
as well as
we had, different missions, and you didn't want to compromise those missions.
That's absolutely true. It's old loose lips sink ships thing.
Yeah, literally. When I was in Germany, we were stationed one base behind the Fulda Gap, which was the big massive plane that Russia's would drove its tanks into Germany.
Right.
I was literally the one station behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there was, a point where we had, Russian spies, and we had to, be OPSEC was the key phrase. And I had a security clearance because I had to do things for the captain when I was the captain's driver.
Mm-hmm.
But that was mission essential stuff
to
protect the unit.
And that in its own right is its own ethical source. However, that's different than just not letting you guys talk to the press because they didn't want you guys talking about what's going on behind the scenes. Talk about some of the stuff that happened in camp. I mean, we know that it's come out that in certain situations there, not necessarily a Desert Storm, but in other situations in Afghanistan and other deployments where women have been deployed, where they've been abused badly. We've heard of, and they're not, that's when those thin blue line situations where you're not supposed to talk about that. But people do, and then it's, wow, I just opened a can of worms. Let's talk about that one another day. But what that boils down to is secrets only. There's certain situations where secrets are appropriate and certain situations where they're not. Mm-hmm. And the question is, where does your moral compass lead you? And if your moral compass leads you to fraud, waste, and abuse, you probably should take a closer look at your moral compass.
Yeah. There are certain things that are, being kind of uncovered here locally.
Yeah. We've got some really interesting stuff come up, and we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah. I'm really curious. I mean, the fact that we've had, like the local police department's missing machine guns.
Yeah. That one just boggles my mind.
Well, it's not the first one, because I know there was one up in Ephrata a couple years ago too.
That's again mind-boggling.
Yeah.
How was that even a possibility? But it is, and it did, and they've never been tracked down. It's like, oh, that's no good.
Yeah, and it's the accountability.
Yeah,
and that's the big thing about for fraud to disappear, mm-hmm. is you've got to hold people accountable for their actions.
Correct. And you hold them accountable. There have to be consequences. You can't. One of the things we've seen over and over again is, oh yeah, we caught you. Oh, sorry. Okay, here you go. Here's your slap on the wrist. Go about your day. Keep doing the same thing, Mr. Super Billionaire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's really erodes at the local community.
Yeah, it does. If we can keep the local community, keep our local community held to good standards, mm-hmm. it will. That way, we're teaching the next generation to have good high standards and to keep things honest and low and ethical. I don't know. It's
why don't you know?
I don't know what I'm trying to say. How's that? We just need to stop being such weenies about this. Well, letting people get away with stuff they shouldn't. And we do. People okay. We know. Mm-hmm. We know that this pharmacist who committed a federal offense so far has his punishment has to be fired from a corporate company, when that means he's just off looking for another job. Probably, we have no indication that there's been any kind of consequence besides just getting fired.
There should be some more consequences.
But well, of course, this isn't done. So I'm being honest. So that's to be to be fair. This isn't done yet. But how many other people who we'll police it ourselves, and things aren't getting, the consequences aren't happening. And what's that teaching our kids? You can literally get away with murder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in some cases.
Yeah.
And it's the whole backslide of way back when I was taught as a referee, if you make a call, you stick by the call.
Right.
And that's one of the hardest things that people wrap their head around, the changing environment of COVID. Mm-hmm. And some people have just pointed, just give up. Mm-hmm. The whole let it rip concept.
Yes. Just don't worry about it. Just let it rip through the community, and we'll have herd community and herd immunity, and everybody will be fine. Yeah. Do you really want it? Okay. We've had over nearly 900,000 people die from this virus.
That's official deaths. And I've got
we talked about that last week.
I've got to stipulate that one.
Official deaths over almost 900,000 people. If we just let her rip and don't get vaccinated and don't take cautions, then you want to see another 800,000 people dead? That could happen. Now, I'm no scientist, but I also know that I don't want my neighbors dead.
Well, I think one of the biggest disservices is that they chained the various COVIDs together.
Yeah.
Because the original one infected about one other person.
Yeah.
And then these are rough numbers.
Oh, yeah. Everything's rough.
Now, the current Omicron.
Yes, Omicron.
Infects about one person can affect like 9 people.
Yeah, it's really virulent.
I mean, it's massively virulent. Like Twist, I want to say Twist. Little old town of Twist. It's got like a couple hundred people to it. Mm-hmm. It's not a big town. 50 positive.
Yeah.
And that tells us it's like, okay, yeah. Now the other numbers about that are like, if you're not vaccinated, you've got, it's something like 23 more times more that you're going to land in the hospital.
Exactly.
So it comes out there. If some people do hey, it's supposed to make you immune. It's like the original ones never did. It reduces transmission, yes.
Yes.
And that's been proven time and time again. And I hear this over and over. You can still catch it. It's like, all the other ones are the same way. Yeah, you can still kind of catch it. It reduces the transmission. Mm-hmm. Then the next one is I hear, but we need multiple boosters. It's like, dude, you need like 4 or 5 boosters for polio. Which brings us to the, hey, we have mandates. The mandates are horrible and wrong. Well, that's because some people don't have that sense of community. Mm-hmm. They have that sense of group versus community. And so they don't want to get shots. Yeah. Or because it's been so politicized. Yeah. They refuse to come into the community, but they expect to be able to still walk unimpeded into community from that narrow bigoted group,
because those folks believe that they're right and everybody else is wrong, and they're bringing they're sharing their rightness with the rest of the community. They're busily educating,
busily infecting.
That too.
And because group rights do not trump community rights. No. And that's a big thing. It's like saying state law trumps federal law.
Nope, the other way around. It really is. But the strongest law wins is how that one works.
Mm-hmm. But the ethics are that individual process that allows you to move from individual to group to community to nation unimpeded. Mm-hmm. And the more you hunker down into that, I just want to do whatever I want, one man to themselves, let's Thunderdome it. Mm-hmm. the less impeded you should be, just naturally. But we've got this kind of whacked out, freedom. And let's end it on the Canadian truckers.
Okay, you're terribly amused.
As I'm terribly amused at the Canadian truckers, because I had someone point out that they were all for the Canadian truckers and shutting down Ontario because it was, they had a right to drive their truck across the border unimpeded.
And unvaccinated. That's the issue.
And I was like, it took them months to negotiate between the two countries to say, oh, hey, you know what? We'll do the whole vax thing. And that means border rights. That's just one of those basic ones. It's like, yeah, if you acknowledge border rights, you can't say, oh, freedom to drive across the border unimpeded.
Now, here's a question for you.
Okay.
If this was the Mexico border rather than the Canadian border, what would the attitude be like?
Well, that was another one that was pointed out. And this is that whole ethical dilemma there. Was they expected someone crossing the Mexican border to be force vaccinated.
Force vaccinated?
Force vaccinated, that they could not be released without being vaccinated. They wanted them to be force vaccinated. Yeah.
But not Canadians.
Not Canadians.
Okay, what's the difference? Brown versus not brown.
Okay, that's a good note. Canadians.
Well, yeah, and right. But let's leave it on that note and let you think about it a little bit.
So yeah, operate with a lot of truth. And if you see your group operating with that absence of truth, it's time to maybe move on. And
not alternative facts, actual truth.
Yeah, because there's just like, you can tell. I had one that hit me with on Reddit with a Substack crazy. COVID only infects the if you've got multiple morbidities, and it's like, dude, there's been like world-class athletes that have gotten this stuff and died.
Oh yeah. It's not a matter of well, the whole comorbidities thing is that's a whole nother conversation.
It's a group thing.
It's a whole nother conversation. Right. But let's wind up because we're at our time.
So hey, have a great day.
Thanks for joining us.
Live an ethical life.
Yes.
Don't lie. If you find your group lying a whole lot because it's secretive, find a new group.
Yeah.
Serious. There are plenty out there.
Be a better person.
You don't have to be that way. You don't have to live that way and to have a good life.
And there's people out there that will support you if you leave that group.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.